Jeff Wright. I will go to Jeff Wright for a moment. We haven't had Jeff participate in the past. So Jeff, you want to unmute yourself for a second? And have you had a chance to use the 10 questions and how's it going?
Yeah, I use the 10 questions with everybody, and
Perfect.
I find they're great. They open up some really good conversation, and they lead to some really interesting information that the client probably wouldn't have disclosed had I just tried to wing it.
What kind of information are you eliciting from your clients when you go through the 10 questions?
Well, they like to go into a lot of detail, even more than I'm even asking. They start to go through the confidential financial questionnaire on their own without any prompting. They get into a lot of personal information, their thoughts, their goals. So it's really intriguing, and just about everybody always says they've never had anybody ask them those type of questions before. So they really enjoy them as well.
Okay, good. Perfect. Yeah, yes, that's a nice setup to the questionnaire, which is what we'll get into today as well. So, Kathleen, I'm going to go to you for a second, Miss Van Denberg. All right, so now I'm going to go to a volunteer. So let's go to someone who wants to volunteer that they've used the 10 questions with one of those 6 people we've identified in our 2 week ago session. There we go. Julie, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, Dawn, I did not do my homework, but I have to say I use the questions every single time I meet with new clients. I would never meet with new clients without using those 10 questions. I find them extremely useful because they tell you what they like that they're doing, what they don't like that they're doing, and basically what you need to stay away from and what you need to focus on. So whether I'm doing investments or insurance for clients, I always use those questions. So even though I didn't do my homework, I can say I have lots of experience with that part of Circle of Wealth because that's the one part that I actually use almost every single time. Although as a reminder to myself, when I'm doing online meetings, I'm not as careful as having that prepared and in front of me. So I have my procedure in office and I have to change a little bit and get more structured for my procedure at working from home. But other than that, I pretty much always with a new client use those questions. So
Yeah, I think that's an important point. I mean, as I have said this to other people, I always use the 10 questions always, and I always have them in front of me. I always bring them either if I'm doing it on a webinar, I mean, I have the script for today's session in front of me as well. You want to make sure that you have those 10 questions in front of you. And I know you're going to get really good at the 10 questions and you won't need those questions in front of you. But the beauty of having them in front of you is it frees up your mind not to be worrying about the next question or thinking ahead 3 questions or getting mixed up in the questions. If they're in front of you, the client won't think any less of you if those 10 questions are in front of you, and or you can hand them over to them and have them in front of them as well, because the way you ask those 10 questions is not necessarily the way they're written on that sheet. As you know, as you massage those questions a little bit, you get better at asking them, and you elicit more information from your clients through those 10 questions. Someone was going to say something there. Who's that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's great with couples because you can, when a husband and wife are there, you can find out what's keeping them up at night. What they think has been positive in terms of their investments. Usually one of them is a little more risk tolerant, and one of them is wants a little more security.
Right.
And it helps go through that and also find out, I guess, the past experience of what one person might think is a good experience, the other person might think, yeah, but that would remember the challenges they had or the lack of a guaranteed outcome, and it was kind of like a whatever it was, like a real estate deal that could have gone either way.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's an interesting point as well. If you are with a couple, you do get different reactions to each of those 10 questions from the couple, right? Because we're all built a little differently, and if you're sitting there with your spouse, she has different feelings about money than you necessarily do. One of the things that Don does is that he has an extra day at Cal College down in the States, and it's about marriage and money is the session, and it's about the interaction between couples and their spouses and money, and how we think about money differently than our spouse. So if you have a husband and wife that you're trying to do a deal with, or a same-sex couple or whatever, you probably best advised to ask those questions individually of each of them, or at least have them participate in the answer of those questions, because you definitely get a different perspective, and you'll also find out who the decision maker is between those two people, and or who is the influencer on the decision. And you need to know that when you're, if you're going to put together a substantial deal. There are certain points I find that clients can make a decision pretty quickly in a first meeting. When it gets over that $10,000, that $20,000 limit, depending on what market you're in, they definitely want to have others participating in that buying decision. If it's a $25,000 premium, they want to have somebody else at that table, and it's usually their spouse if it's a family deal. If it's a business deal, it just brings in partners and all kinds of things. But you definitely get an inkling of the dynamics of the couple when you're asking those questions in front of the people. So I appreciate that. And the last one for sure is that what keeps you up at night. The new question really it replaces that when it's about, the most important thing about your money is what. I don't really like that question as much as I do about what keeps you up at night. The what keeps you up at night question sometimes ends up in a 20-minute conversation about, their parents are moving back in, or their kids are moving out, or their kids are moving back in, and they're 30 years of age.
Or they're married.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you find all kinds of things out that you would not ordinarily find out having not asked that question.
So I guess I do some of this, Don, I should say, but the number 9 one that I wrote in the text is the one I use verbatim, but I have taken it and shown my team, and we've gone through it and tried to adopt it a little simplified a little bit. But
Yeah.
I find that when I do it, I don't do it like robotic 10 questions. I ask open-ended questions that are similar to the 10, but not maybe identical to the 10. But that one, number 9, I pretty much keep that one verbatim and get interesting questions. The one challenge I have, Don, that I want to ask you that came up while you were talking is, what happens when you always have the husband wanting to meet with you at work or whatever, and you can never get the other partner in the room? He kind of takes, and it's important that they're there. Like, what's one way of framing or discussion that you can get that other person to meet? Because there's always one partner that kind of takes over, but you want to hear the other person.
Yeah, I think that, again, that's different. Even without Circle of Wealth, there's ways to do that, right? I mean, Circle of Wealth doesn't really change the need for that. The one thing that I always do is that, these are some pretty important financial decisions, and it's important to have all the decision makers here at the table, because they might have some different ideas about the future and moving forward. And I'd like to get anybody that you think should be at this meeting for this first meeting anyway, to find out where we're going to go with it. They don't necessarily have to be at that next meeting. They might be at the closing meeting, if you want to call it a closing meeting. I call it a supporting meeting. It's supporting the buying decision meeting. But if you call it a traditional closing meeting, you might have all the people there at that meeting that weren't necessarily there through the process. Remember that if they aren't there through the process, you have to, when they do come and arrive to that meeting and they are decision makers, you've got to go back and bring everybody up to speed. And it's a real pain in the rear to do that sometimes, because the thing about the Circle of Wealth, it's also an educational process. And now you're bringing somebody in who wasn't in earlier to the educational process, to lost opportunity costs, to why whole life, to, the private reserve strategy, to what does insurance really do and how does it work? If they aren't there for all of those conversations, you're back at zero. And now someone at that table is at zero and someone's at the finish line. And it's very difficult. It makes the process very difficult. So I would have that conversation with that business owner in that first meeting. If, the last time they made a major decision, who was at the table, and who else would be involved? What's your past experience been in making financial decisions? That's a very general question, but in a business situation, what's the last time you made a major decision? Who was at the table when that decision was made? If I'm in a business situation, I want that person there. If they saw all of a sudden the owner's a really outgoing guy and he doesn't do anything without bringing his accountant in, you need the accountant in fairly early in the process. And Dwayne, you've been around a long time. out west there in I forget, you're Edmonton or Calgary or in Red Deer.
Edmonton, just outside of
Edmonton,
Edmonton.
yeah. What's your experience in having the decision makers there in business cases?
I think a lot of the business cases is just the business owner, and they're the ones that make the decision. But
Yeah, when you have partners though, how do you ensure that you get both partners at those exploratory meetings, or do you include the partners and both partners in the exploratory meeting?
I guess in the last 20 years, I haven't brought in enough new clients, but they're just automatically there.
Is that right? Yeah, they're always there. Yeah.
Innovation.
Yeah, I find
Just
these bigger meetings today, the partners usually, the both people are there. But if you have a relationship with the one partner and you know the other one is in the decision-making part of the equation, you want to get them there as early as possible, Dean, because like I said, I don't want to retrace my steps if it's a 2, 3, or 4 meeting process. It's just a pain in the rear.
You said a few minutes ago, the most important thing about your money is that how you said it?
Yeah, it's in that new version of the 10 questions.
Okay.
There's out there now, I think if you go in the software and you ask, it'll go 10 questions, it'll go to the 10 questions and it'll show you the 10th question. In the original 10 questions, they've massaged those questions. Don is always working on the 10 questions, trying to improve them and make them better. A lot of the changes to the software, and the Canadian software specifically, and the American software, it has evolved over time because of input from people like yourselves. So if Dean, like you were saying, you have 10 questions that you use, and not necessarily these 10 questions. I just recently saw somebody who has 20 questions. They've got 10 additional questions they've added. And some of those questions might be better questions or questions that fit well for them. You know, it might not fit well for you. I don't find that I need any more than 10 questions as triggers. I end up asking more than 10 questions because of the 10 questions. I go other places depending on what they say in answering the 10 questions, because then I get a better feeling for what their hot button is, what their experience has been, and what problems they might have. I mean, the reason for those 10 questions is to find out if it's worthwhile for us to get together to do the confidential questionnaire, to explore more fully what they're looking for. And I think, again, after we do the circle talk here, you'll see that the final question in the circle talk is how does what I do meet with what you're looking for? And if they say it doesn't, then it's over, right? So if they say, no, this is exactly what I'm looking for, and I've never had them say, no, it doesn't. I've always had them say, no one's ever asked me those questions before. No one's ever talked about money like this before. I didn't know that about this. Yeah, I know, I'm interested. It's right in with what I'm looking for. So they want to explore it a bit further to find out if there's a need and a want to satisfy. This really is the opening meeting. Those 10 questions is the opening meeting to see if you can quickly uncover some issues they might have, some beliefs that might be erroneous, and then now you know what beliefs you need to work on to get them thinking open-mindedly enough to make a change. If they say I've got a $3 million worth of term, I have no whole life, I always ask why. Why is that? Because they obviously believe in life insurance because they got $3 million of term. But they might believe that whole life insurance is just a bad investment. That's sometimes what they say. What if what they thought to be true wasn't true? When would you want to know that? So that is not a question that's in the 10 questions, but it's one of the questions on a Circle of Wealth that leads me to, well, what do you mean? Then they ask you, what do you mean? Then I have that. I always love to ask that question about their current financial strategy. I say, or their ideal financial strategy. I even change that to, because most people don't understand what you mean, what you're meaning when you say that. What I ask them is, let's take a few minutes. I'll use you, Edmund. Edmund, take your microphone off for a second.
Sure.
So Edmund, we're just gonna explore an idea for a minute. Is that okay?
Sounds great.
Okay, so always check for approval. Always check, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, let's do it. Sure, let's have some fun. I said, so right now, I don't have a cup in front of me, but I always have I always ask them for a bottle of water or something, right?
Here you go.
There you go. So let's think for a moment, imagine for a moment, if you will, that glass you're holding is the best investment that man has ever created. It's something that really is attractive to you to invest in. And if it was, Edmund, what criteria would you want it to satisfy for it to be an attractive investment for you? What kinds of things would you want it to do?
Oh, I don't know, Don. Can we start with the rate of return? I want to see something pretty good.
So they go through a litany, right? They go through a list of things, and I quiz them on rate of return. Great. Well, they say rate of return, but you see what he said there was rate of return. He didn't say what rate of return. He just said rate of return. So I've got to ask a follow-up question. I wouldn't ask the follow-up question just then. I want to get the other criteria first. So rate of return is important. Let's do that. Rate of return. What else?
I'm not a fan of tax. I think we get killed in this country when it comes to our investments, and I'd really like something that could actually shelter me from tax.
So tax efficiency and tax sheltering. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now remember, I asked them question one already. Well, question one is how'd you hear my name? Question two is what kinds of things have you done in preparation for your financial future? You see what else I just did there? For those who have not been on this call before, wouldn't know that's question number two. And if I ask question number two in sequence, not number five, number two. Number two was, what kinds of financial instruments have you purchased up until this point in your life? And at that point, I'd ask him, how old are you, Edmund?
I'll be 42 this month.
42. So between 0 and 42, you've probably purchased some financial instruments. What kinds of financial instruments have you purchased up until now in preparation for your financial future? What do you own?
Primarily mutual funds in the past is what I've done.
So he's going to list everything. I'm not going to do it now because it'll take too much time, but he lists everything he owns. TFSA, RRSP. He's invested in balanced portfolio in his TFSA. I don't even care what he's invested in his RRSP right now. I don't ask that question. I only ask the object. So I want to know what does he own? Now I'm testing his beliefs. He believes that he has an RRSP, right? Edmund, you have an RRSP?
That's exactly where I was going. I didn't say it, but yes, my
sorry.
mutual funds are RRSPs. I like that tax shelter.
Okay. So tax sheltering. So what he believes to be true about tax sheltering in his life may or may not be true. He may not be at a lower tax rate at his retirement. He's assuming that he will be at a lower tax bracket in his retirement. He may or may not be, depending on how he takes his income, how much income he has. Does he have pension income? Is it just RSP income? And how much does he have? And you can't fill that RSP with enough money to satisfy his retirement. You really can't, because it's only 18% of his earned income to a maximum of, like, was it this year 28,000 or something? It always is a cap, so it's limited. So I just go through the list of things in question two. Then I ask him in question five, let's go back to describing that ideal investment, because now we know all the investments you have. We know the positives and negatives of those investments. And because I ask you, what do you like best about what you're currently doing? You told me. I ask you, what do you like least about what you're currently doing? You're going to tell me that. The RSP has a limit. The TFSA has a limit. The RSP, the thing you like about it was tax deferral, tax postponement. But you're going to say tax savings. The average person is going to say that. We wouldn't say that, but the average person today will say tax savings.
Yeah.
Now I'm at question five, and you've had all these other things. I'll ask you, now we get a chance to develop this unique product, and we're going to develop a new investment product. What criteria would you want it to have? Tax efficient, rate of return, tax sheltering, what else?
Let me see. I'd like to be safe. This COVID thing's taught me a lot.
Okay.
As a business owner, I didn't really have any access to all my RSP money. And while I like the tax sheltering, it really would have helped if I could get my hands on some of that money that I worked so hard to put away without being penalized for it.
Okay. You don't like that early redemption fee?
No.
All right. What other kinds of things do you like? Would you like it to have?
Oh, I'd like it to be safe.
Safe, I got that, yeah. So, I mean, you just kind of go through that and you develop that question. Like what we need to do is if this was a workshop and we were live in front of each other, we'd all have our microphones off, we'd all be in a room, we'd all put our hands up, and then we could go around the room and say, Rebecca, what do you think? What other attributes would you like to have in that financial instrument that we're designing today? What would you like to see it include?
No, I don't know.
Okay, let me help you. Like, would you want to be able to use it as collateral at some point?
Yes.
Okay. So you'd like to have what Edmund was talking about was ease of access of his money. Would you
Yeah.
like to have it have liquidity, use, and control of your money?
Yes.
So you know, what do you call that? Luck, right? Circle of Wealth calls that luck, liquidity, use, and control of your money. Still have your money, but still have access to your money. I don't have to take money out of my whole life policy or collateralize it. You know, there is no taking it out of the policy. There's collateralizing it from the policy or against the policy. But we use terminology if we're not with Circle of Wealth or we're not with Leap or we're not with Infinite Banking. We use terminology here that's different than the terminology other financial advisors would use, because other financial advisors who don't study this material are a little messed up. They say things that aren't true. And one of the phrases that we use is, if what you thought to be true about whole life wasn't true, when would you want to know, Rebecca?
Sooner rather than later.
Exactly. And they always say right away. I'd want to know right away. They go, perfect. So what they've just described, Rebecca and Edmund, is really whole life insurance. Now I would go and get some more criteria in there, but they've just built the 10-minute lesson on life insurance. So I could segue. I wouldn't after question 5. I keep going through to the bottom where it says, you know, what keeps you up at night. But I know now in the back of my mind, I've got a path I can go to. I can show the 10-minute lesson in life insurance and show Edmund that, you know, it's kind of interesting. You have $3 million of life insurance. Well, let me tell you the good and the bad of $3 million of term insurance. And then there's the lost opportunity cost. That's going to come, the renewal rates are going to go higher. You might not die between now and 85 and it won't pay and no one gets that money. If there was a way to put life insurance on your life today without any additional outlay, is there any reason why you wouldn't want it, Rebecca?
No.
Perfect. So good. I'm just marking down the answer. I always mark down answers, even in role play. I always mark the answers down. I'm programmed. So yeah, so people want life insurance. They just don't necessarily like paying for it. I don't blame them. And that sets up what we're going to talk about today, the circle talk. Go ahead, Evan.
Hey, Don, quick question.
Yeah.
Isn't liquidity and use the same thing?
No, because I mean, you want to say it in like it's liquid in that I have access to it. Use is I can use it for whatever I want. I can get it when I want. Like you're in your example. If, for instance, you know, if we look back on all the guys that sold whole life policies that had premium deposit option on them, and there was lots of cash in there, during the last 2 years, if you had a choice of collateralizing that whole life policy or withdrawing money from your RRSP to get you through the bad days, what would you rather do?
Collateralized.
Every time. But
All
if you've
day.
only got, and you only see people, business owners typically, that have lacks of term insurance, they don't have that collateral ability, right? So I can't fix the mistake they made. I can't, you know, they talk about recapturing lost opportunity cost. There's no way you can correct for bad mistakes with life insurance, but you can't recapture. I can't go back to Revenue Can and say, geez, if I'd known I could have bought a whole life, I would have given you less money because I would have had less access to cash in my RSP deposit. I wouldn't have put so much, you know, you can't go back and say, I'm going to recapture that mistake.
Yeah, sue the Primerica guy that sold them the term.
Well, exactly. You could sue them, I suppose, but you wouldn't be able to sue them because they bought it based on the information they had at the time. And you don't want to insult people about how stupid they've been because they've been stupid because they didn't know. And if you insult them and tell them how stupid they've been, they're going to say, well, thanks for telling me how stupid I am. Now get out. Like there's a no win there, right? So we've got to be careful. Even that's why I say in the 6 people to go see 6 people. I said, go see 6 people you already have as clients, because you said some silly things to those clients in the course of your doing business with them that you thought to be true that wasn't necessarily true, knowing what you know today. So now you're saying, you know, when I've seen people like that, I've had the advisors, clients say, well, why didn't you tell me about this 10 years ago when I was doing that $3 million a term? They go, well, that's why we position it by, I recently discovered this new way of doing business or this new way of thinking, right? You know, I've developed my expertise to the point where I've learned some things that I need to show you, Edmund, and we have a chance here to make your financial life better than it is today. And then I know it's good. I've been working with you for 10 years. It's great. But if I can improve your financial situation today and better protect your family, give you more accumulation, and increase your lifestyle with no additional out-of-pocket outlay, is there any reason we want to have a 30-minute meeting?
No.
Let's get together Tuesday or Wednesday. It's always a close, right? They always want to have that meeting because they want to know what they don't know. And when you go there and ask them the 10 questions, you're not selling them anything. So it's 10 questions or 45 minutes, 30 minutes of a discussion. It's 10 minutes of catch up, how you doing? And 25 minutes of, let me ask you these 10 questions. And now I think I know the answers to most of them, Edmund, but I've never really asked you these questions before. And I think they're important. Let's just go through them, okay?
Sounds good.
You're always going to say that. That client is always going to say that, unless the client now hates you. They're going to say, yeah, sure, no problem. You know, when Kathleen goes to see people today, she says, you know, have you ever thought about being a real estate owner? Would you like to own some rental properties? If I could show you a way to make a down payment on a rental property without any additional out-of-pocket outlay, how much of interest is that to you? Well, yeah, if I was into rental properties, I want to hear her story. And she's doing it herself, and she can show it to clients. And these life insurance policies have given her the ability to do that. Anybody that uses infinite banking, you know, big guys out west doing lots of infinite banking now across Canada, Scott Cordier and his crew, there's nothing wrong with collateralizing life insurance to buy real estate to increase my RR, you said rate of return. I could give you double-digit rate of return, not necessarily in the life insurance policy, but if the life insurance policy created you an opportunity to get double rates of return, is there any reason why you wouldn't want the life insurance? No, I want the life insurance. If it's going to let me do this and get real estate rates in the last 5 years in Toronto and GTA and Ontario, Vancouver, Montreal.
I have that discussion all the time with people.
All the time.
Do you want me to elaborate at all? Or?
Absolutely.
Like I compare it to like what was the rate of return that you got on your house, right? You put 100 down, bought a $500,000 house, now worth $1 million. That's the type of return you can get from your whole life insurance policy if you use it. It's not just the return on the death benefits, return on the cash. It's the return on what you can get if you borrow and it's still growing and create additional wealth. It resonates.
Yeah, you haven't diminished, you know, if you go back to infinite banking for a minute or private reserve strategy in Circle of Wealth, you haven't, and you know, if you go to Spender, Saver, Wealth Creator, it's the wealth creator that's doing that. You collateralize the value of the policy to make a down payment on a property, and the insurance company looks at your policy when it attributes the dividends in the January or so. They tell you next year's dividend is going to be X, but whenever they have their annual meeting and set their dividend, your dividend is going to get attributed that dividend, whether it has a collateralized policy or not. But if I've used the liquidity use and control of that money and done a real estate deal, and real estate's gone shot up the way it has, is it going to always happen? No, but it's pretty consistent these days. I mean, these days, real estate's been terribly consistent in terms of its exponential growth. It's going to, you know, reset at some point, but it always has reset. And then it just blows up again. You know, a few years ago, we had a reset. Before COVID, things slowed down in real estate. Since COVID, the open houses have gone on again. Now people are bidding on houses. They're bidding on houses, and they're not even taking, what they learned through COVID is, don't have an open house, stay away from my house, go online and look at my house, and then all the deals will be accepted on Tuesday, and we'll review them, and we'll get back to you. Right? And there's bidding wars, and people don't even know what they're bidding against. They're just putting an offer in, and I saw a house recently in my old neighborhood. It was up for 1.7 and it was already about 300,000 overpriced, I think. It went for 1.8. They aren't building more land on the Ontario, the shoreline of Lake Ontario. It is what it is. So they become much more valuable as time goes on. But anyway, I digress, which is what I shouldn't do. Anybody got any comments or questions about the 10 questions or what we talked about so far? Just want to open it up. Go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, so I did my homework. I was
Yeah.
a good little boy.
Yeah.
And I, against your recommendation, I did try the 10 questions on somebody that was referred to me.
Okay.
Right? Because you said, do it with people that you have known.
Oh, I didn't say don't do that. Well, for sure do that.
Yeah, I did. But then there was also this scenario, right? And what I wanted to point out were two things. Question number 6 is golden, because number 6, which is, what has been your experience with preparing for your financial future?
Right.
In essence, it actually points to you and what you're doing right now. These 10 questions that you're running them through, that somebody probably has not done before.
Right.
They will tell you what was wrong with the last picture, so you know exactly what not to do.
Right.
And it starts drawing out all these feelings, right? All the questions do that without asking them how they feel. And you have the opportunity to dive a little deeper. And of course, it's how they feel, which is ultimately going to make them decide to purchase, right? So that's what I love the structure that it created, and it sets you up to win.
It's funny you say that, because what you will find is that any one of those questions could be that trigger, right? It happened with that couple, that was that trigger with that couple. That's what I like about those 10 questions. You never know where it's going to come from. Like when I ask people what they like best about what they're currently doing, sometimes it goes, Julie will tell you this, that sometimes it goes on for 15 minutes on their real estate deal. They did this collateral. Well, if you went to a Kathleen client right now who's done a real estate deal and invested, what's been their past experience? Their past experience with Kathleen and their ability to buy a real estate property has been phenomenal. So they're just going to go on for 10 minutes and talk about how great Kathleen is, right?
Right.
So that's what you want to have happen. I mean, that's where we all want to be. So it's what's been your past experience? Oh, my dad was ripped off by an insurance agent. He bought whole life. He got ripped off. It didn't premium offset. They sued the company. There's all kinds of stories out there. When you're as old as Dwayne and I, you've had clients for, you've been in this business 30 years, 20, 30 years. Judith Fig on the line here. You've run into people that have had some bad experiences with life insurance agents or investment advisors. So that will tell you, have they got somebody involved with them right now? Did they used to have somebody? Or is it the Prime America guy now because he's buying term and his strategy is buy term, invest the difference? And he was introduced to it by his friend who used to be a bottle washer over at, not to denigrate Infinite, what do you call them? Prime America or somebody. But their philosophy is not necessarily totally a great philosophy. Not a bad philosophy, just not necessarily the best philosophy and not the philosophy for everybody. So that question is an excellent question, and that's why Donnie put it in there, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm amazed by, sometimes I say, I always say it like this, Edmund, is, you work long days. I'm up pretty early. I'm up at 6 o'clock at night. I'm in the morning, sorry. I work all day. By the time I get home, have something to eat, watch a television show, I'm ready for bed. I always ask the client something like that, right? Saying, what's your night like? Blah, 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 blah. They tell you. And I go, so what's the last thing, Edmund, that you think of before you go to sleep? What's on your mind just as your head hits that pillow and you go to sleep?
How am I getting that next client?
Perfect. Absolutely. So what are you doing? So if you were an advisor like you are, I'd say, let's talk about your prospecting techniques, because you should never worry about that. If you're worrying about that problem right now at this point in your career, there's been some mistakes, right? And we can fix them.
I mean, long term, right?
So I know
tomorrow, but yeah, ultimately, where's your
do.
career going, and that's why we're here, right?
as advisors, we're always thinking about that. Where's that next big sale? Where's that next big client? Where's that real estate? Should I buy, Kathleen's sitting there right now. Should I buy another investment property or just slow down? Like, I don't know. She doesn't know. Like, you don't know what to do. I mean, is inflation we're going to get hit very shortly with inflation. Look at gas prices. And we were getting hit with inflation. Look at gas prices. Look at these containers. They're dropping these containers in the ocean right now just to prepare us for the ability that we can't get food or toys at Christmas, and they're going to charge us 3 times as much for those things. The rental of that sea container is $25,000. The normal rent is $1,500. So they're just preparing us for a disaster coming up. So anyway, again, I digress. Stop me from this.
Don,
let's walk through the circle talk. Dean, go ahead.
Where's Mark?
Mark's probably out selling right now.
Oh, he's making money while I'm listening to you. Okay.
That's right. Damn. He's already listened to me, so now he can go out and make money. All right. See, you're right. I should mute you. I'm going to put you on mute. There you go. All right. Let's. I'm going to share my screen with you for a second here. The first thing you do, obviously, is you fire up this the Circle of Wealth Circle Talk, and the way I start this off is, and I'm going to read some of the script for this, because what I do is a little different than what's in the text, but I want to give you the text today, and I'm going to record this and provide you a recording of this probably later this week. I'm going to record this with the visuals so you can play it along. Otherwise, you got to go up into the software and into the program and print off the text. And you can print it off for each screen so you can start to memorize what this screen is related to. But here's your circle of wealth. So this circle represents all the money that you'll have. Your circle of wealth is larger than some folks, some are larger than yours. There's one thing that all of us have in common as it relates to our circle of wealth, which is that we want it to grow larger. But we always want it to go larger. At minimum, we want it to keep it from getting any smaller and keep it the same size as today. But there are 3 ways to enlarge your circle of wealth. One is, most people feel the number 1 way is to accomplish this through increasing their rate of return on their investment dollars. Well, it certainly is true that we can increase rate of return and get better results, but there are some risks to that as well. So it might not produce greater results. Then I flip right to, that brings us to our second point. I use this all the time in a napkin talk. I use this at Tim Hortons. I use this on the kitchen table of my client's kitchen, always. And I wouldn't necessarily always use the software to do this talk because I don't always have my laptop in that scenario. I would do this on a piece of paper in front of them. And I talk about this. There are basically 3 kinds of money. The first, which gets all the focus, is your accumulated money. This represents the amount of money you currently have invested and are currently saving. Now I can click on it and it's going to give me a scale of 1 to 10. And I can ask them, how well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you say you're doing on your accumulated dollars necessary to meet your future retirement needs and goals? And everybody says like a 5 or a 6 or 7. Sometimes they say higher or lower, but they might say 7. I said, great. Now I can open this up, and has anyone ever, the question that goes with it is, has anyone ever shown you what a 7 looks like? And they always say no, because they've never seen the 1 to 10. But if I do the 7 and I open up, I'm going to go into a worksheet like that. I don't want to do that at this moment because I don't want to sidetrack the circle talk. So when you do click on the number, you get to plug in their current income, their age, their retirement age, how much they've accumulated in the accumulation pile, what kind of rates of return are they getting, and all that kind of stuff. And is there a pension? And you can add pensions and everything else in here. I don't want to have that conversation during that circle talk. I just want to scoot through it. So I wouldn't click on that scale of 1 to 10. I'd say 1 to 10, how do you think you're doing? Then I go back here. And I'd say this, any question, anything less than a 10 would mean perhaps you should be putting more money away. So we can start to put more money away, but they're going to say, well, I don't have any more money. I don't know what else you're talking about because I can't find any money. The next kind of money that I like to address is lifestyle money. This is the money you're currently spending to support your standard of living. So lifestyle represents the dollars that you are currently spending to maintain your current standard of living, where you live, where you eat, your vacations. How much energy would you like me to spend towards reducing your present standard of living so that you can save more money? They always say zero. I haven't met anybody yet that doesn't say zero. So I don't spend any time with them. So yeah, that's what everybody says. We know we need to save more money and we want to do so, but the only way we can save more money is from our lifestyle. This brings us to the third kind of money, which is transferred money. And this is a problem for some. Transferred money represents the money that you may be transferring away, and you got to say these two words properly. Transferring away unknowingly and unnecessarily. I sometimes say unknowingly and in some cases, unnecessarily, because they need to know that money's going away from them and there's something they can do about it. In some cases, there's nothing you can do about it. Like you got to pay your taxes, but if I can reduce their tax bill in some capacity or postpone or defer it, and they might be at a lower tax bracket later, then postponing it's not a bad idea. If I can put the money someplace else that grows better than the difference they would have had they put it in the RRSP, that would be good as well. So in Kathleen's example, if I'm getting 15, 20, 100, 1,000% rate of return on my real estate deals, is there really any value to me putting money in an RSP, or do I save up some money for a down payment on a real estate property if in fact that's something that I want to do? So that sets up that opportunity where I can do a real estate deal and not reduce their standard of living because I'm taking money that they would have otherwise put into the accumulated pile in an RSP and I'm putting into real estate instead. But you've got to do the numerical calculations to make sure that you can make that work. Obviously, if you knew where there was transfers that were taking place, you'd already solve those problems. As we visit today, I'll explore with you a few possible areas where you might be transferring money which can be recaptured. So I say recaptured or reduced, right? If I'm transferring money away from you, I might be able to reduce some of those dollars that you're transferring away and redeploy those dollars towards your accumulated money and or your lifestyle money and better protect your family along the way. But I feel it's important to begin focusing on the money you might be transferring unnecessarily because that's most often the biggest impact on your circle of wealth over time. The interesting thing is that by avoiding unnecessary transferred dollars that are freed up to put towards accumulation or lifestyle with no additional out-of-pocket cost. So far, how does that approach sound or fit with what you're looking for? So you do a checking question there, and it says, up till this point, how does what I do sound with what you're looking for? Edmund, how does what I'm suggesting fit with what you're looking for?
Sounds quite interesting. I've never had anybody ask me or come to me with that approach.
There you go. So I just get back into it. Right. That's why we're unique. We'd set up that line where that's why our approach is quite unique. Most advisors don't use this approach. Most advisors, as I said earlier, focus on getting you a better rate of return and increasing your risk in that accumulated money. Rather than do that, I think there's more opportunity. And, there's the other line that Don uses all the time now about, I think there's more chance of avoiding the losses than there are picking the winners. So if we can reduce your lost opportunity costs and avoid the losers, we will win and increase your circle of wealth as well. So the other place that you can go to here is on the transfer dollars. That in the script, in the version that I have, they don't talk about but the transfers and then the lost opportunity costs. Because every dollar, I always do this in my script. When I deliver this, I always say, where those wealth transfers are occurring, there's also an opportunity cost, because if that dollar is transferred away from you at your rate of return of 6%, let's say, then you're losing every dollar or transferring dollars away from you at 6%. That's the opportunity cost. The opportunity cost is what your money would have earned had it not been transferred away from you. So my job is redeploy that towards your lifestyle, increase your lifestyle and or your accumulation account as well. So here's an example of where those losses are occurring. Now, what Dawn suggests here is that we get them to pick out of these major transfers that could be occurring, which ones they want to look at. And there are 5 top places where transfers are occurring. So I'm going to get somebody from the group to answer what those 5 top transfers are occurring. So Jeff, I'm going to go to Jeff Wright because he's an expert at this. So I've set you up, Jeff. Unmute yourself, Jeff, and tell me where the 5 major transfers are.
How you pay your mortgage,
Mortgage,
taxes, major capital purchases, saving for retirement, and children's education.
there you go. Of those 5, which would be your top 2?
For me?
Yeah.
Well, my kids are done school, so I guess retirement is definitely one.
Okay.
And it's a toss-up between mortgage and taxes.
Okay, great. Why is it a toss-up between mortgage and taxes?
Well, they're both pretty impactful on your bottom line.
Okay. And of those 2, which is more of a concern to you today?
If I had to choose, I guess I'd probably go with mortgage.
There you go. Perfect. Okay, so I've marked those down. Now I could explore that now, or I could just move on, right? You can put back into view. So I've got your 2 concerns. I've narrowed down 2 concerns there. So of these major areas of wealth transfer, which seem to be of major concern to you, you said mortgage looked like, and retirement, obviously getting closer to retirement. In order to control the transfer of interest and its opportunity cost, you must put yourself in the financial position where you have the choice to use your money or somebody else's money. By that I mean you must save to the point where you can choose to pay cash or finance. If you choose to pay cash, you should pay yourself back. As long as you use money from others, they will require interest for that privilege. Until you have enough money accumulated, you will be forced to transfer some of your wealth away. Once you've accumulated savings, there is an opportunity to use money from others at a rate less than your money is earning. Getting to that position will be critical in the growth of your circle of wealth. Would you agree? Remember this game, Edmund?
I do.
Who won the first time you played tic-tac-toe?
My dad.
Usually is. It's usually the person that taught us. And there's only a few simple rules, right? They probably told you the object was to get 3 in a row. Then they'd say, I'm the X, you're the O, you need 3 in a row. So where would you go on this deal? No, pretend the X isn't there. Where would you put your X?
Where are the X's?
So some people would talk to you about your money first, focus on the dollars you're saving or have already accumulated. They might say that you could do a better job for you by providing products offering better performance and higher overall rates of return. Now, this is that screen that I was talking about earlier. I'm going to reposition for my other part of that talk. We would agree that better investments with higher returns would increase one's circle of wealth, but products alone are not the answer. The process is also important. For many, what little time spent on financial strategy is often focused solely on increasing returns on saving and investments. So you click on this savings and investments. That's where you can. But what happens is if we go for higher rates of return, and this is what I like about this screen, it also increases the risk and the losses on all the opportunity costs might get larger and the taxes might get larger, increase on debt might get larger. So to illustrate this point, let's assume that you're going to send, but to assume for a second, you're going to be playing in the Masters, the world's most prestigious golf event. You have 2 things to offer you, but you could only choose one. You have the clubs of any professional golfer who ever played the game, or you can have the playing ability or swing. Obviously, you do better in the game with the ability rather than the clubs. That's why the golf analogy, so some people say, why is there a golf analogy in here? That's where it comes up. It talks about the swing versus the club analogy. So in the world of finance, what is it the financial institutions deliver or offer you? They have products to sell, which we'll call the clubs. Unfortunately, too much focus is on the product. Now, interestingly enough, right now, there's a big push going on whole life product. Whole life product with deposit option. because you'll notice that RBC, IA have just come out with new products that have allowed the deposit option facility on their whole life products. So the factories, let's call them the factories, or the club manufacturers, are spending all their time right now doing webinars about how their product is better than the competitor's product. So if you watch the RBC presentation, they'll talk about everybody else like Manulife, Canada Life, Sun Life, Equitable Life. And then if you go to the, that was RBC. So then if you go to the IA presentation, they'll talk about RBC, Canada Life, everybody else. That's what they do. So what's different about what they do and what you do is you talk about the strategy and how to use those products as opposed to that, which product is better. Because at the end of the day, all of those products are marginally similar. They're just because of the way they're constructed, the way the portfolio they've gone to invest in is backing up the investment performance. The longevity risk is the same for each of those carriers. There's no difference in them. They're using the same table in terms of longevity risk. So they're very, very similar. What differentiates them a little bit is what they're promising on their deliverable of that dividend. And as we know, and where we get into criticism of outside people from outside the industry, is we can't promise today that the 6% dividend or the 6.25%, or at IA the 5.75% dividend is going to be there next year. We have no way of knowing what next year's dividend is going to be on those products. That's just a moving target for all of those carriers. So any one of those illustrations that are being delivered by any one of those companies after it's issued today is incorrect. That's why at the bottom in the fine print, it says exactly that, right? So we have to be very cognizant of not falling into promising a deliverable that we can't deliver. So I would say to you that the strategy of finding out where those losses are occurring and the transfer dollars and recapturing those lost opportunity costs on how they finance debt, how they pay their mortgage, how they're saving money for their child's education and younger kids, not Jeff's obviously, how they're saving for RSPs. It's even more important today because the carriers have gone right back into mine's better than yours scenario, and the client's going to be the loser. So it's really important for you to be very skilled at finding where those losses are occurring. And that's why this circle talk sets up the confidential questionnaire and the fact finding. You know, this job hasn't changed too much in terms of what it is we actually do. You know, I'll go back to the script here for a second, but you know what the companies focus on is again better products, and what we focus on is the swing, and that's what makes us different. So some are so focused, you know, so busy focusing on how great their product is even their client never really learns how to leverage it effectively. What Kathleen talked about in terms of purchasing real estate property with that product, with the premium deposit option, that's more important, and buying the right real estate deal is more important than the 1 or 0.5% dividend difference in dividend on the product. There's not, you don't have much, you have zero influence on the product. You have more influence on where they put that money to get those double-digit rate of returns. You must master the use of your money to learn how to avoid losing strategies along the way. You must also have access to your money, liquidity, use, and control, and be able to make the necessary adjustments when needed. We refer to this as having liquidity, use, and control. That's why it says it right in the script. You know, if a real estate deal came along and you had money inside a policy, the ability to access that cash, that's way more important than borrowing money from an insurance or from a bank to make that deposit on your real estate deal. So, and then you go to look where's the best rate of return and pay yourself back first. You gotta, if you collateralize that life insurance policy to be able to do another deal down the road, we need to pay that money back as quickly as possible to the institution where we've collateralized it. So I want to make sure we have that very clear. We focus on the swing, not the club. Don't go chasing product returns because you're gonna lose every time. We know that we need to save more money to ensure the future is secure. with all the transfer problems that may exist, it seems that reducing our lifestyle to save is not a very hard thing to do, but it's not one that's it's undesirable as well. So it's not something we're going to run and do. We are aware of these problems, but most of us do not how to solve them. The common solution, additional saving and investing, will not eliminate the wealth transfer problem. In fact, it might compound the inefficiencies that are already going on. So having more money might just cause it to compound and get worse. So they'll continue and compound and grow as well, effectively reducing or negating any additional growth in your efforts that they may have produced. The point is, if you do not eliminate the sources of the transfers along with your circle of wealth, you're going to run into trouble. But there are two ways to fill up this bucket with holes. The first is increase the flow, of water into the bucket, more revenue coming in, which really is just going to cause quicker leakage. Or if we could plug where those losses are occurring, even a dribble, your current income will fill that pail up, and you'll be much better off. Now, ideally, let me share with you our prescription for your financial health. We encourage clients to save a minimum of 20% savings, hopefully get to a zero debt service, and 80% in lifestyle. That would be position A. We want to be in a position where 20% of our money is going towards savings, 0% towards servicing debt, and 80% towards lifestyle. So you may be saying to yourself, there's no way I can save a minimum of 10% of my gross, much less 20%. In working together, if I could find the money without you having to change your present lifestyle, would you be interested? And that sets up, yes, I would be interested. Great. Then all we need to do is create the questionnaire. So I could have done this presentation as a webinar to you, and then like Jeff is illustrating, sent you the questionnaire. I can get you to complete the questionnaire, and then I can find out where these losses, if there are losses, are occurring. And that way we can start eliminating and reducing those losses to create that cash flow that we don't currently have. If there are lost opportunity costs and we're experiencing them, my job is to find out identify for you where they are, and then make a decision. But we're going to go into each one of those things. We identified only 5 of them today, but the idea is that, okay, now I've got this to talk about. How am I going to talk about it? So now we're going to go into each. If you look at the program that I sent you, is once we've got some fact finders filled out. So my assignment to you today, you need to go out now, and those 6 people that said they wanted to hear from you, and you went out and asked them the 10 questions, we need for us to make this turn into a money-making opportunity as well as a training opportunity, is to get some clients to fill out the fact finder. So I sent you the fact finder initially. You might have a fact finder yourselves, but if you're using the Circle of Wealth fact finder, get one completed for our session in 2 weeks, because I want you to send that fact finder to me, scan it, send it to me so I can review it. Because the objective of the game here is to find out from your fact finder where your client might be losing money unknowingly and unnecessarily. It's called finding the money. Both Leap and Circle of Wealth are focused on finding the money and using it more efficiently. Finding out where the money's being lost unknowingly and unnecessarily, recapture, reduce, or eliminate that, and redeploy that money to free up cash flow so they can buy insurance and or more savings or more lifestyle, or invest in real estate property with no additional out-of-pocket outlay. The closer you can get to no additional out-of-pocket outlay, the quicker they're going to get to moving forward. Remember the phrase, people move in the directions of their wants. If they want to be a real estate owner, or want to have their house paid off, or want the things that life insurance will do for them, they will move heaven and earth to get to that point. We've just got to show them how valuable those instruments are, whether it be a real estate deal, whether it be a whole life insurance policy, whether it will be a maxed out TFSA or maxed out ADO policy. We've got to show the value of that. So in working together, if I can identify areas of expense, loss, and return of that money that will allow us to increase contributions to your personal savings and investment account, run more money through your company, let's say your company, it's your company thing, or increase your present lifestyle and solidify your future lifestyle, while at the same time reducing your risk, would that be of interest? The client's always going to say, yeah, tell me more. On a scale of 1 to 10, how does this, what I do, meet with what you're looking for? It's a 10. Let's get going. Now, I've done the 10 questions before with clients and then shown them really quickly the retirement alternative scenario, and they've given me checks for $100,000 in an hour. Not everybody's like that. 25,000, 50,000, 30,000. But Kathleen, you've done those deals, and I know Julie has, and Edmund, you've got some nice deals. You'll have people that once they see the value of what it is you do, take advantage of those deals, of what it will result for them, whether it's a real estate property in Kathleen's scenario. Go ahead, Kath.
No, 100%.
Exactly. I mean, if you can improve people's lives by even if you just reduce their expenses and increase their lifestyle, at least you've done a good thing, because you're trying to find money they're losing, redeploy that money to better financially put them in a better position. If that's all you did and you sold them $2 million of term insurance for no additional out-of-pocket outlay, that's a thumbs up, great job. Because frankly, you know, a husband and wife or a couple with 2 kids need 20 times their income. And if it's term insurance for today, that's okay. If you can give them term insurance today with no additional out-of-pocket outlay, even better. And if you can actually give them more savings in their retirement, because they will be at a lower tax bracket later, and you can put term insurance on their lives today, that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But once we look at the fact finder and get the answers to the 10 questions, we'll know which path they want to head on. They might not want to head on the term insurance. Maybe they want some whole life with a term rider of $1 million. I don't know. And I don't want to sit here for the next 6 months imagining scenarios. I'd rather have you make money on us looking at scenarios and you going back to that couple and saying, we'll show you exactly what to say when you go back to that couple or individual to do the deal. That's where this course is going to change direction now. This is like, you need some learning. You need to do some learning to get really good at what we've done so far. That's it. You can learn the other stuff as we go while you're making money. And if you think we can help you, Kathleen can add lots of assistance on those real estate deal scenarios. Edmund does a lot of work in that 35 to 50-year-old business person, and Rebecca is learning from Mr. Gleed there about family market and business market. And Dean Kennedy, he's been in business a long time, got lots of experience, wholesaler at Sun Life for a number of years. We've all got lots of it. Judith Figg has been in the business for 25 plus years, Judith, and sells to very wealthy people, huge whole life policies. We've all been in the business a long time, and I want us to learn from each other how to just get better at what we're doing. And that's all I wanted to say today. So I'm going to stop recording. We'll see you in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, I forget what the topic is, but look at that agenda. If you don't have the agenda, or if you've lost it, send me an email. I'll send you the new agenda. We're back on track, I think, on our agenda. I took a week just to get to that PEM. I wanted you to see the PEM first before the circle talk. And now we've caught up. We're at the circle talk. And I think now we're going into find the money, if I remember correctly. Okay, anybody got any final comments?
Question, what about the what do you do script? I thought we were supposed to be perfecting that.
Let's hear yours.
Oh, wow. Just on the spot like that?
Yep.
Okay. Well, as a financial professional, I come to the table with a very unique approach. What makes me different is I find the money that people are losing unknowingly and unnecessarily. My philosophy is that there's more opportunity in avoiding the losses than there is in trying to pick the winners. In working together, we can identify these losses and reallocate them to enhance either your current lifestyle or that nest egg that you're accumulating for. And in the best case scenario, probably both. Does that sound like something worthwhile?
Okay, let me stop you for a second.
Jesus, if that's your off the cuff one, that's
hold it.
amazing.
Rebecca.
That was
I can't
fantastic.
compete with this guy.
Take your microphone off, Rebecca, because this is Rebecca's first week and she's never seen Circle of Wealth before. Rebecca, would you do business with that guy?
Oh, I would.
I would.
Don,
Yeah.
I remember you been saying all these years, Don.
What'd you like best about what he said?
He was confident.
Knew exactly what he was saying, right? Did you believe him?
Yes.
Would you trust him?
Yeah.
Sold. There you go, Edmund.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
You put me on the spot.
In the
Oh, well, tell me more.
yeah, how do you do
Yeah.
that? Exactly. Well, then he can go into the 5 areas where there's major losses, right? How
See,
we
that's
finance
usually
their
where the
home,
pause
major
is. It's
capital
right there.
purchases.
But
Yeah.
you're right. That's the perfect place to go.
It's well, it's what Don says. It's the script. Yeah, that's the script, right? It's like you just ask him that question. If you were losing money on knowing when you get on the phone with somebody, I mean, even if you're calling clients or referrals, you know, I don't know if Edmund told you what I did, Dean, but what I do is it's a unique approach, and then you just get into your talk, right? And I help people find money they're losing unknowingly and unnecessarily. I don't know if you need my services or not, but if you were losing money unknowingly and unnecessarily, when would you want to know, Dean?
Oh, right now, Don.
Let's get together. Are you available next Tuesday or Wednesday? Boom, that's it. Because he can't say no to that. If he says, if you get into too much,
Yeah.
then I can say no to that stuff, right? I don't have a mortgage. You know, I got an account for my taxes. And I'm not saving for retirement, or whatever, right? But he cannot say no to if I was losing money unknowingly and unnecessarily, when would you want to know? Everyone wants to know right away. That's the close. Boom, done. How do you do that? Oh, I got to see you to show you that. Because I want to set up my circle talk. Right?
And then the 4 questions, right?
And then the 4 questions. And then I get into that 1 to 10. How well prepared are you for your retirement? Let's go back to that screen and show them what a 6. Have you ever seen what a 6 looks like? Like if you go to the material, go back to the training material, right? If you want to go down that path of the four questions everyone wants to know the answer to, you know, go to Rebecca again. You say, Rebecca's never seen this before. Never. So she's a newbie. You go, there are 4 questions everyone wants to know the answer to, Rebecca. Do you know what those 4 questions are?
No.
Perfect. And now just ask the 4 questions. Would you like to know the answer to those 4 questions? And she's going to say right away,
Yes.
I want to know if I'm on track. It's perfect. Like the system, I got to tell you guys, the system is perfect. Just use the system. Just embrace it, love it, use it, play with it, have some fun.